haven't seen what is really happening yet in all my years. How did we get to a point where we treated other human beings as slaves, and we're okay with that? When I see the Make America Great Again, my comment is, do you accept that could possibly be construed as a racist remark? And most people, a lot of people go, how could that be racist? Make America great again? I said, so just ask yourself from an African-American experience, when was it ever great in America for the African-American? When was it great? So if you're making it great again, it's not including them. So it's to teach us in the woke world to open up and accept the possibilities that our privilege has created blind spots for us. And maybe I haven't seen what is really happening yet in all my years. How did we...
So, listening to Bryan Cranston. He's a good actor. I like him. Loved him in Breaking Bad and other good movies he's in. But I disagree with what he's saying to some extent. Let me tell you why. To really understand what he's talking about, you really have to understand the history of the United States, and I would say post-Reconstruction era. And I would say that America was great at one time, and it was super great, and it was extraordinary great during the 1920s after World War I. It was so great that everyone was living with the means to do whatever they wanted to do. I mean, if you look at, for example, urban cities like New York City and Harlem, for instance, I mean, everyone was affluent. It didn't matter what color you were. Everyone was sharing in harmony. Everyone had a successful business or was working and making good money. Everyone was dressed nice and everyone were having a good time. That's why they call it the Roaring '20s. And when, in my opinion, the economy is flourishing, it benefits everyone across the board. And that was a time where America was great. It was really, truly great. But when the economy, and it's so important to understand the economics of this country, when the economy is not doing great, then, it's all about, limited resources. And when you have limited resources and now you're not doing so good, naturally the first thing you want to do is take care of your own. That's just a natural thing. And I think that's what happened in the Great Depression following the Roaring '20s, is that we were doing so good that we weren't paying attention to future investments, that there was a big, big economic bubble that led us to the Great Depression. And from there, that's when unconsciously, or even sometimes consciously, people started to separate and say, you know what, I really want to help you out, my friend, that we've been going to jazz clubs together and things of this nature. But you know what, right now I got to take care of my own, I got to take care of my family, I got to take care of my loved ones, and then that's it. So, I really want to help you out, but just can't. That started that movement of security and insecurity financially. I think what started to make America less great. People weren't coming together to help. And that lasted for a while. And comes the 1940s, leading up to it, where we have now, FDR coming in with the New Deal, because America needed a remedy. It needed an answer. And, he came in with how can we put people back to work again? Because he understood the importance of having a strong economy. And so he came up with this New Deal, putting people back to work. But now the white Americans are seeing, you know, the people who are really truly benefiting from this progressive movement is the people of color. So they ain't like that. But they continue on with their own private enterprises, especially in the banking system. And then World War II came. And World War II, we were fighting now two sides of the globe. You know, we were fighting Germany, and then we were fighting Asia, and America was distracted for a while. And people of color were, you know, that's what we had the big, what they call it, draft or something of that nature, I think. I'm not really so sure, but I think we had the draft in World War II. But, no, actually, that was in Vietnam. That's coming up. My apologies. But anyhow, people of color, you know, they went in, and in some respect, I think only then in the military, the brotherhood, again, in terms of being colorblind, was again stimulating and becoming strong. But that was only in that institution. In society overall, America was distracted. Even though we had all these public works projects and things of that nature, we weren't where we were before the 1920s. So then we had World War II, followed by the Korean War, followed by Vietnam. 10 years apart. So we were distracted for a long time. And then after Vietnam comes the 70s. Jimmy Carter comes into office, a guy from the Midwest, with his policies. And people were starting to realize that, okay, now there's an opportunity for us to take serious action on giving the entire American population the opportunity to empower themselves, to have jobs, things of that nature. And so we started to come up with new programs, specifically in the banking system. However, with those new opportunities also came a lot of resistance because the white people resented the fact that people of color were benefiting more than they were when it came to the New Deal. So banks were engaged in a lot of corruption as redlining, where now, you know, the whole idea of having a bank is to make money. But in this particular case, how do you make money? Well, you make loans, right? So in this particular case, the bank were very selective as to where they were going to do business. And if you were a person of color, they would just flat out reject you without cause. And comes the 80s, Ronald Reagan, and he's a Republican, he's very conservative, and he's a big supporter of the banks. He kept pushing this. He didn't really do much of a change until people started to stand up and protest against this. And we had a lot of reform with Community Reinvestment Act. And now it gave the banks almost a slap in the face and saying, look, you have to now, by law, you have to get out to the community and you have to pay some type of, how can I call this, remedy, I guess for lack of a better word, to make things right again. But at the same time now, remember, we had just left Vietnam, and then now we're into the 70s and going to the 80s. And immediately after we left Vietnam, what did we bring with us? You know, we were in Vietnam, and we had a short time in Honduras. So what do we bring with us? Like, what was going on? What was the federal government thinking? Well, we became one of the biggest And again, this is to address how do we make America great again, and that's by being a super industrial power, which means having a strong economy. So one of the things that we found profitable was drugs. So we brought in cocaine from South America. We became the world's biggest drug dealer and the world's biggest arms dealer for Nicaragua. And then from the other side in Asia, we brought in the poppies. And we became the biggest heroin supplier. So here we are now in the 70s, going into the 80s, with the biggest drug dealer in the world, the biggest arms dealer in the world. And who was that impacted mostly? Because in the 70s, it was the white people who had the money, from their struggles, because they wanted to just take care of their own, build their businesses, only hire white people. It wasn't that fact that it was purposely racist. It was just a fact of survival. So they took care of their own. So in the 70s, it was a disco era, and people were just doing cocaine, which is expensive. And now comes, all these other drugs in the 80s, specifically crack, where now the government is seeing this and they're saying, well, these people of colors in these urban societies, could now afford something cheaper, and let's just make it possible for them to engage in it. And this will keep them down for whatever reason. This is my perspective. And let's also make laws. Let's make laws so strict now that if you got caught, in these criminal activities, your life is over. Your life is over, and this is due to the Rockefeller laws. So the government's idea really was to dissolve the nuclear family for the peoples of color. And the important thing about the nuclear family is that if you don't have both parents with you, because they're your first teachers, and you are not raised by them, obviously there are going to be issues. So here we have now, we're in the 80s, we're in the 90s, going into the 2000s, and now even 2010. So you've got 30 years that are going through, and now you have these families, single mother families, doing the job of two rows. And then the federal government would just subsidize and help them out by giving them a lot of furthermore public assistance, which a lot of white people say, well, what the hell's going on? Why are these people getting all this assistance for? So there's always a hypocrisy, but it is what it is. And it wasn't the right remedy to do. It was just shameful that the dissolvement of the nuclear family existed. Because who knows where a lot of these people of color families would be today if they had their nuclear family. But the reality is the reality. What can we do? We can learn from it and not repeat it. So, nuclear family does what it does. Not having a nuclear family has outrageous and harmful outputs. I think that now we're seeing the results of bad policy. I think that, for example, when Donald Trump says, let's make America great, I don't think he needs to go back into what this actor was saying to the beginning of American history. I think it's good enough that we begin from the 1920s when America was really great. And I think he understood that. And I think that's why he is so vocal when he talks about the corruptibility of government, federal policies that are bad, the economic disparities that exist, and the social inequalities and the prejudices that continue to thrive in our society. So I see where he's going, but I don't completely agree to it. I think the greatest equalizer now for everyone across the board is that we're living now in a more information age and information/technology age where people are no longer dependent on anything else but their own energies and creativity. And I think once you have that, then you could amply call yourself an entrepreneur if you put those to work to better yourself and to profit from it. And I think that's going to make America great. And I think that's why we need a businessman to run this country, this corporation, actually, and not a politician that's just going to go with the common idea or the most supportive idea for whatever reason. We need, I think, a leader, and a leader by the definition of what leadership is. We don't need someone who pretends to be a leader. And I think, and I hope moving forward, now that we're in the 21st century, we realize what it takes or what it needs to be done to make America great again. Now, I said a lot. I hope I didn't put you people to sleep, because I know sometimes, like, I'm saying things, it's not a narrative that I'm reading out of. I'm just saying things as they come to me, as I remember the best that I can. But if you disagree or agree, just make a comment. I'd like to hear your thoughts about this. But yeah, that's my stand on this. Have a good night, and let's make America great.